So during the Octave of Christmas, and it's appropriate that we have an octave, the church is really unpacking the impact that this birth has. It's impossible to unpack it in a day, right? In just one Christmas celebration. And to be honest with you, it's really impossible to unpack it even in 8. And yet the church does a very good job of just sort of leading us along every day through that octave to approach the mystery from a new angle. And the mystery of the Mother of God is one of those things. It's not an accidental detail where we're like, oh, well, let's celebrate her because now she's a mom, and that's about it. Or it's not even only of historical value, which we are reminded of a time when they had to declare solemnly that Mary was the mother of God to protect Jesus' divinity. It has profound theological and spiritual value in a manner that is often unspoken. And the figure from which I want to approach that mystery a little bit might be one that's totally new to you, because that's how just unmentioned it is. And that figure is the figure of daughter Zion. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that before, but there's this shadowy character of daughter Zion that develops throughout the Old Testament, and I want to touch upon that a little bit now. You see the image of daughter Zion referenced in books like Isaiah, briefly in Zephaniah, Lamentations, some of those. And so what happens is we see that daughter Zion is a reference to the city of David. It is the place where the king lives. And as time goes on, in the wider city of David, daughter Zion comes to be referenced also about the mount on which the temple is. So it becomes the dwelling place of God. And so you have these ideas of the king of David and the dwelling place of God interchangeably used in the reference of this daughter Zion. And daughter Zion was viewed in, as time develops, as cosmic in nature because in her is the center of God's kingdom, which encompasses both heaven and earth. So in this daughter Zion, heaven and earth come together. The royal political king of David and the dwelling place of God himself, they just sort of intersect. And the idea here was that Zion was to form the heart of God's kingdom into the world, where justice and peace, prosperity, and all of God's plans were to flow out from her like the river from Eden into the rest of the world, fertilizing it and making it all that God had intended it to be, so that it would bear fruit. And God would rule the world from this messianic king that is going to arise in daughter Zion. In fact, this task that daughter Zion has is so severe that Isaiah the prophet will tie the fate of the entire world to her, such that if she falls, with her falls the rest of the world. If she is unfaithful and defiled, so goes everybody else. But then the descriptions become a little bit more specific. Like Lamentations will refer to daughter Zion as a virgin, but then at other times Lamentations will refer to her as a mother. And she is described as the object of God's love, who is called to rejoice in the presence of God. That comes from the prophet Zephaniah. The very God who rescues her from captivity, says Isaiah. Now, as far as the people of daughter Zion go, because God rules from Zion, they are to be a priestly people, a holy nation, which Exodus will say, offering sacrifices on behalf of the world and atoning for the world's sins. So they're supposed to cooperate in that whole idea of out of daughter Zion flows God's holiness, peace, justice, and justification into the world to make it whole. Now take that context and go back to the creche. Changes everything, doesn't it? Because the problem in salvation history is that the daughter Zion fails. The whole Old Testament theme is the inability of God's people to rise to the occasion of their vocation. They are unfaithful to God. They do allow defilement through idolatry, through a desire to become like the nations. They become ravaged and they are dispersed. They're exiled. They're despoiled. They're everything they were not supposed to be, which leaves this void of surely somehow God's going to fulfill this. Surely, somehow. And one of the promises in Daniel is that he gives the calendar of when this is all actually going to happen. Like God's plan is not going to be thwarted. So when we go back to that creche and that child is born, and we in the Octave of Christmas are trying to unpack what that means, if he really is who we say he is, then by default, Mary is necessarily the fulfillment of the daughter Zion that the world and the people of God specifically were waiting for with grieving hearts. She is virgin and mother simultaneously. In her motherhood, she is the cosmic location where heaven and earth meet, the dwelling place of God and the presence of the true Davidic king made possible in the incarnation. She is the seed of the Messiah who blesses the world. And the world depends on her fidelity. We as Annunciation know this better than anybody else. If she says yes, the world rises with her. But if she says no, we fall. And Bernard of Clairvaux understood that deeply and preached beautifully about that mystery where like the entire cosmos and his description at the moment of the Annunciation just stops and leans in and begs her, this one-time Mary, please do not be meek and humble. Be bold and say yes to the mission. And she does. And because of her fidelity, because of her immaculate conception where she is undefiled, her purity, she is able to realize what God had intended for all of his people to be, that source of life out of which flows life itself. And so, salvation is born and present in our midst, and it's going to spill out, and it's going to continue to spill as the blood of Christ coats everything all the way up to Calvary, into the Eucharist, into me, and it all begins in her womb. So we rightly call her daughter Zion. What does that mean for us? Well, it means we have a chance to be everything that God has called us to be. Because as daughter Zion, she is representative of the people of God. That's the whole point. She is the church. She is everything that God desires from us, who makes us holy, who bathes us in the waters, who forgives our sins, consecrates us. And all he asks from us is a yes, to follow him. And he's going to leave that creche very soon. And our moment to shine or to fall is coming upon us. And so we have a decision to make. And Mary can help us with that choice. And so we ask her intercession today to show us how to love her son as she did, to be faithful and virginal, but fruitful all the same, so that the world may rise together.